Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of really cool deck lists that did well at our recent online tournament this past weekend. But before we do that, we got to let you guys know about our tournament this upcoming weekend. That is going to be our 4th community tournament. I'm actually really excited about this because Greninja is banned. We're trying something new. We're going to just not allow Greninja specifically for this tournament, and we're going to see how that impacts the metagame. It should be a nice, fun break from the standard format that we've been playing for the last, 6 or 7 weeks now. So, yeah, go ahead, go register. Link down in the description below. I'm really curious to see what the metagame looks like and, what deck ends up winning the tournament this weekend. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Again, at noon, October 18th on Saturday. It's there it is. That's it. Go register. Link to the tournament page will be down in the description below. Okay, so let's get right into it. So what we want to do in this video, and what I'm going to try to do a little bit more regularly, is showcase decks that, of course, still do well in online tournaments, specifically our online tournament on the weekends, but aren't necessarily considered to be the meta decks. I think that there's a lot of really cool decks that you can play that might not theoretically be as strong as the top, decks at the top of the metagame, but they're still fun and they're still good. And specifically speaking, in our tournaments, there is a point structure to make it into the second day of competition, into the top cut bracket. Typically, you have to get 15 match points, which means if we play 7 rounds of Swiss in day 1, you have to go 5-2, 5 wins, 2 losses to make it into day 2. But there's a whole bunch of players that go 4-3, which is still a winning record, but theoretically, not enough to make it into day 2. And on Meta Monday, we typically only cover the players that do make it into day 2. So this is kind of like the part 2 of our Meta Monday series, where we just highlight the decks that, of course, just missed on the top cut, but are really cool creative deck lists. So that's what this kind of video series is. I'm going to try to do this a little bit more regularly. It allows me to showcase some of the players of the tournament while also showcasing some really, unique deck lists that, again, are considered to be off meta or just sort of not necessarily contending decks, maybe one-off decks. It's fun to talk about them anyway. So let's dive right in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and shout out to all these players. The first player we're going to take a look at here is Heartbreak Kid, who was playing Tapu Koko EX with Oricorio in Zero Aura, but he was playing one Zapdos EX, and I actually really like this. Now, I don't think that Zapdos, by any stretch of the imagination, is a meta Pokemon. Zapdos saw play way back in the day, basically as just sort of a last-ditch effort back in the original formats to potentially one KO things like Mewtwo EX at 150 HP, and it used to see play with Pikachu EX. Zapdos really hasn't seen any play since then. There's just been so many different lightning type Pokemon that have come out, but you got to keep in mind that theoretically speaking, Zapdos can still one KO most Pokemon in the game. So when we're playing an aggro strategy like this with Zero Aura with Tapu Koko, we're not bad into things like Suicune. So that's the advantage when we're playing Tapu Koko and Zero Aura, and even one Oricorio. These are cards that are good into Suicune. Oricorio, maybe not because of Greninja, but Tapu Koko, Zero Aura, definitely strong options. We're playing double X speed, right? And all of the Pokemon in our deck here have a retreat cost of 1, and that is definitely a pretty big upside to Zapdos. Things like Raikou have a retreat cost of 2. Things like Pikachu EX and Pachirisu could be useful here, but instead of playing Pikachu EX, we're playing Zapdos EX, and I find that to be kind of interesting. Double Elemental Switch. The cool thing about Zapdos, as opposed to something like a Pikachu, which is guaranteed to hit for 150, it doesn't discard the energies, right? So theoretically speaking, we can still attack on our second turn with Zapdos. We're flipping a couple of coins. It's definitely a bit of an RNG type Pokemon, but it's just sort of an alternate option here to the Pikachu EX from Shining Revelry. It's better in the early game, worse in the late game probably, but theoretically speaking, it can hit above 150, which is pretty cool if you just flip all 4 heads, So again, I don't think Zapdos is really anything too crazy. This is a deck list that, practically we've seen from time to time. It's really just replacing Pikachu with Zapdos, and I think it's kind of funny. I wanted to showcase it. Again, what this is, Heartbreak Kid. He went 4-2-1. So again, shout out to him from Taiwan. Zapdos EX represent. Would I recommend playing Zapdos? I don't know. I would assume this deck 95% of the time is reliant on things like Tapu Koko and Zero Aura, but who knows, right? It's still the inherent upside of hey, maybe we can just flip our heads here. Maybe we can go and do 150, 200 damage and win the game. Zapdos does have that potential. And I remember distinctly way back in the day, watching the grand finals of back in Genetic Apex of an Ursa Days tournament where it was Pikachu and Mewtwo in the finals, and the Pikachu player was definitely going to lose. There was no way around it. And then they just went into their Zapdos and then flipped 4 heads and they won the game. It was pretty funny, but that's what the game came down to. And, that was kind of what it was like back in Genetic Apex days. Again, I don't know if I would really recommend Zapdos as much as Pikachu, but it is a pretty fun option. And theoretically speaking, I don't think Zapdos is really that bad. So there you go. Shout out to Heartbreak Kid and his Zapdos deck going 4-2-1. Yeah, I mean, hey, he just missed top cut, which is pretty interesting. Next up, though, is going to be Breaking 2 Mirror from the Dominican Republic, also at 4 and 3, and he was playing Raikou EX and Arceus. So the cool thing about Raikou EX is that I actually think it's a good Pokemon. The only downside to playing Raikou EX is that, unfortunately, going first, the card just really isn't that good. We are playing Elemental Switch, and we're playing Zeraora. The cool thing is that Raikou draws cards, just like Suicune does, and it does hit Suicune for weakness. Unfortunately, Suicune with Giant Capes and playing double Irida in their deck list, they're oftentimes able to heal out of getting 2-hit KO'd. So Raikou EX is not a consistent option in terms of being able to KO Suicune, which is a bit of a downside to the deck list in general. So you need like a backup attacker. That is where traditionally we've used Raikou EX alongside things like Arceus or Pikachu EX or really anything else with Elemental Switch and Electrical Cord. I used to play like the Raikou deck from back in the day with Electrical Cord, and I actually felt like it was really good, but unfortunately it was like a strategy that would get sort of thwarted by Guzma, and then a lot of people started to play Guzma. I think that Raikou EX has a lot of potential. There's a lot of support around Raikou EX. Again, I just really think it comes down to the fact that Irida is such a broken card in Suicune that Raikou is not even consistently 2-hit KOing Suicune, and again, if you go first, then you're just behind unless you get a Zeraora on your first turn. But Arceus is actually a pretty cool Pokemon. Now, we don't actually have like any way of getting Arceus set up, which is kind of tough. Like, we have Pichu and we have Zeraora, but like if we go with Raikou, it's probably unlikely that we're going to get Arceus set up, or that we can get Arceus set up unless we pivot into Pichu for a turn, or we have Zeraoras to start the game. This is kind of like a turbo Arceus deck, but just with Raikou thrown in. And anything with Raikou I like to showcase. Again, it's a really, really fun Pokemon. It has certain advantages. Now, this deck list doesn't have anything for the Oricorio matchup, again, other than just the one Oricorio and Zeraora. And Zeraora works fine against Oricorio. I just don't really think it's like a real counterplay Oricorio option, right? So, there's so many different lightning type decks in the format right now. I try to showcase them all from time to time. There's so many different combinations and variations of these lightning decks that you can use. I'm actually really excited for a potential lightning mega Pokemon to come in B1. By the way, we did get some news about the new booster packs coming in the next update at the end of October. And there is going to be 3 of them. So this is kind of a random bit of news here because we did a news video yesterday, but this news broke after our video yesterday. We are getting 3 booster packs for B1. So probably going to be a month and a half or 6 weeks in that metagame, just like we did for Genetic Apex. So that's not confirmed. We'll have to see. But anyway, I'm actually really excited to potentially get like maybe like a Lightning type EX Pokemon, or really anything adding to the Lightning archetype, just because there's already so much support. All we need is like one like really decent lightning type attacker, or like even like a card that just supports lightning type Pokemon that can kind of put it right over the edge. And with water types being so common right now, being by far the most, OP archetype in the game, like any additional buffs to the lightning types, even though technically it doesn't really need it, could potentially really swing things in the favor of lightning and not water anymore. And I think that definitely could be pretty fun. So anyway, Raikou EX, we are playing Leaf and Red. We're playing Repel and Cyrus. Like back in the day, it was like, Raikou, Tapu Koko, double Repel. Like it was fun. I really did like that deck. And it was really good into Suicune, but, Guzma saw a lot of play. And I think other lightning type decks just became a little bit more popular. But yeah, it's Arceus, it's Raikou, it's a fun deck. I wanted to showcase it. Next up, though, and by the way, shout out to Breaking 2 Mirror from the Dominican Republic. Next up is going to be Harrion. So we talked about this deck on Meta Monday. I just wanted to showcase it again for people that maybe didn't see it. This was a player that did actually make it into Day 2, and he was playing Porygon Z, 7-2 here. This is a really fun deck. One of my favorite decks of the tournament, honestly. We did highlight it in Meta Monday because he made Day 2. He actually had a pretty good run. And I believe he got a bye in the first round and then lost in the second round, I believe is how that goes. That's why he was 2-2 or 7-2. I think is how it works. Or maybe not. Maybe he went 6-1 in day 1. I kind of forget. But either way, a pretty fun deck. Like Porygon Z is actually kind of interesting. It works very similarly to Stoutland, but Porygon 2 basically allows you to kind of skip that rare candy business, and you can effectively just kind of get into Porygon Z pretty easily. I do think this deck has some room for something like a rare candy, so you could just skip to Porygon Z if you wanted to, or if you draw into Porygon 2, you can also just go into Porygon Z. So I like the deck. It's going to handle a lot of the lightning type Oricorio decks very well, but also there's just a large amount of decks right now that do get 2-hit KO'd by the 70 damage, plus the Poison Barb, plus we have Lele to heal up Porygon Z. It's actually really good into certain archetypes, but it's not like the most like strongest deck in the world. I do think that this is like a real deck list and it has potential. I don't know if it'll really catch on. It's one of those like really interesting decks that just sort of happens to do well at a tournament, and I don't think it'll really like become like meta to any stretch of the imagination, but it's just sort of proof of concept that a deck like this can come into the largest tournament of the season and then, go 6-1 and then make it into day 2. Like, that stuff does happen. We have to, like, appreciate Porygon Z for what it is, which is definitely not a bad deck, but something that inherently probably just isn't considered to be, like, super strong. But you got to imagine, right? Like, if 30% of the tournament was playing this deck, like, we'd probably see a lot more Porygons, like, at the higher up in the standings. You know what I mean? There's always that, like thought is like, is a deck good because a lot of people play it, or a lot of people playing a deck because it's good, right? Certain things become popular, like Suicune is like 30% of the meta share, so like, yeah, it's gonna be all over the top of the standings. Like, that's just how the math works. There's no way around that. But again, in a weird theoretical world where, like, if 30% of the tournament was playing Porygon Z, it probably has a pretty good chance to win the tournament. I really don't think this is a bad deck. I just don't know if it's something that'll really catch on. But either way, shout out to Harriet. I just wanted to showcase the deck again for maybe people that did not see it. So next up is going to be Massipi. So this is another player that actually did make it into day 2. They lost in the first round of day 2, but they were playing Raichu Toolbox deck, which is pretty cool. And I think that Raichu is interesting. So we made a video on Raichu. This is playing Oricorios and Pichus, so it's sort of like a turbo, like, Arceus deck, but instead of Arceus, you're just playing Raichu. There is some inherent upside to that. Unfortunately, it is an evolution Pokemon, so, like, Arceus is a bit different. The difference between Arceus and Raichu is that we hit for weakness on the water-type Pokemon, right? So whether it's Raichu EX or Alolan Raichu EX, they're both hitting for weakness on Suicune, which does give you a little bit more of a boost in terms of your ability to KO Suicune. We are playing one Red and one Guzma, so whether it's Raichu EX or Alolan Raichu, we should basically always be getting the KO on Suicune with Red and Guzma, and that's the idea for the deck list. To Oricorio for the matchups where Oricorio is relevant, although we're not playing healing cards, so against things like Giratina Darkrai, it might not be even that, I guess strong or consistent. And then to Pichu. So, the interesting thing, I think the issue with the Lightning type is that a lot of the crazy good cards for the Lightning type just happen to not really be good into Suicune and Greninja, predominantly because of how strong Greninja is, which is why we're banning it in this weekend's tournament. Things like Pichu and all of the baby Pokemon are actually really strong, but they're liabilities when Greninja's on the board, and it can just sort of ping you twice and then KO you. Like, that doesn't feel very good. Greninja can 1-hit KO Oricorio. So, like, Oricorio and Pichu are really, really strong cards for the Lightning type archetype, but against Greninja specifically, they just are actual liabilities, and they make your deck a lot worse into that matchup. And it's one of the weird, distinct things about the format right now that I think is just a little bit, doesn't feel very good. Again, we are banning Greninja this weekend. We're going to see how that goes. Next weekend, maybe we decide to just, like, ban Irida and just, like, let people play Suicune Greninja, but we, like, nerf it a little bit. We'll have to see exactly how it goes this weekend. But anyway, Raichu EX, Alolan Raichu EX. To be fair, this is a deck that functions very similarly to Flareon. So I think a lot of people were like, why would I play this deck if I could just play Flareon and Jolteon? Like with Pichu, because then you get access to EV Bag, and Flareon in general is just a better Pokemon into other matchups that aren't water type. So I think that honestly, like, the Raichu stuff is cool, but it's just a little bit too similar to Flareon and probably doesn't have enough advantages as opposed to Flareon. So that's sort of my one gripe with Raichu. It is a promo card, so, like, I understand why they didn't release it and make it utterly, like, broken, just because, like, they didn't want to, release a promo card that people wouldn't really have access to later on if they missed the promo event. I think that Raichu EX could have been a bit better. Honestly, you could have given it like 150 HP, although the Raichu has 140. So you could have kept, maybe, I don't even know. Maybe we just make it hit for like 150 or 140 and you do 30 damage to yourself. I don't know. I feel like it could have been better. But either way, it's definitely not a bad Pokemon, but Flareon is probably just the example here of, like, maybe we just play Flareon instead of Raichu, but it was a really cool deck. Shout out to Massipi. Again, he did make day 2 from Japan, playing Raichu Toolbox. So shout out to him. Raichu is fun. It is fun. Specifically good into Suicune, but you're probably going to struggle against, like, most other things in the game, which kind of forces you to play Oricorio, but then your deck's a lot less consistent into Suicune, unfortunately. So anyway, it is what it is. Next up is Grant, who went 4-3, and he was playing Meowscarada with Celebi with Sylveon. So this is a deck that kind of popped up like really early on, I think last season, in some, like, one of the first few tournaments. It did pretty well. It popped up again. This player did play it with one Sylveon, one Celebi. And again, they went 4-3, so they just missed top cut. I like Meowscarada. I really do. I wish that Meowscarada had a little bit more potential. Again, the inherent, I guess, downside of Meowscarada is that it's not good into Greninja. Like, especially considering that Greninja has, like, double Irida, it has Giant Cape, it can hit you for 80 damage, and of course, like, it has a draw engine in Suicune, right? So a lot of these other non-EX Pokemon have just been kind of pushed out of the format just because of how broken Greninja is. Meowscarada traditionally loses to things like Silvally, it loses to things like Magnezone, but in the same vein, it actually is really strong into a lot of other Pokemon. It's strong into Suicune, it's good into Giratina, it's good into Darkrai, it's good into Guzzlord. There's a lot of upsides to Meowscarada. It's just that unfortunately, it's not the most fast-paced Pokemon in the game. It's always been a little bit tough going first. The Celebi is really fun. The Temporal Leaf Celebi is going to be really good against like Gyarados and other things in the format, which are a little bit more unique. Like most evolution Pokemon, Celebi is actually really good against. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just think that Meowscarada, with Greninjas running around everywhere, running so many like small Pokemon, being inherently less consistent, definitely doesn't give it enough boost in a format that's just heavily dominated by Greninja. Now, again, we can't cover Oricorio pretty easily, right? Because we have so much HP, we have Leaf Capes, we have Ericas, we can KO, or we can hit Oricorio and effectively KO it pretty easily. So I do like the deck. I think that hopefully next season, maybe with Mega Pokemon, Meowscarada becomes a little bit better. I would love to see Meowscarada rise back up. I think it's a really fun Pokemon. I like the concept of it, even though like this season and in the last few seasons, it really hasn't been that relevant. Just Greninja is just too good. I think about most decks right now that maybe have potential just really fall down to like, well, Greninja sees play everywhere and like Greninja is absolutely broken. So unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Maybe we get like a grass type draw engine or we get like an energy acceleration engine for grass types. I think that the grass type decks definitely need a little bit of support. It's been a little while since Buzzwole was like at the forefront of the metagame. So grass type honestly could be primed for some buffs. I really wouldn't be too shocked about that. In fact, I would definitely be pleasantly surprised if we got some new additions to the grass type that just made it a little bit better. Now you got to be careful because there is a lot of support for grass. We have Ericas, we have Leaf Cape and stuff. Like we got to be a little careful if you're adding new grass type Pokemon, but in general, I think that Meowscarada has potential. I was kind of surprised to see anybody play it at this tournament. So, big shout out to Grant because you know what? He brought it. He went 4-3. Shout out to Meowscarada. Not something I would choose to play right now, but definitely fun to see it. See a little bit of play. Next up is going to be Ravenous 6 from the United States playing Luxray Oricorio. Now, again, Luxray is also one of those Pokemon where it's like this is not a bad Pokemon whatsoever. It just like doesn't feel that crazy enough. You know what I mean? It's just like not consistent enough. The 3 energy attack is interesting. We do have Volkner to get this thing set up. The issue is that we need energies in the discard pile to use Volkner to attack with Lux right now. We are playing Zeraora, but we're not playing Energy Switch, and we are playing Oricorio. So we can slow the game down a little bit. Luxray here with Bolt can do 120 damage to the bench. So we can snipe Greninjas from the bench. That can be pretty cool. Or we can just hit the active Pokemon for weakness and 1 KO a Suicune. So in theory, Luxray is actually a really strong Pokemon, but it's a stage 2 Pokemon, yet again with a 3 energy attack cost. So it's just a little bit steep. This is sort of a later game card, and we are a bit reliant on things like Zeraora and Oricorio in the early game, and even then we have to draw into our rare candies, and we likely have to draw into Volkner. It's just like too many pieces to the combination for Luxray to be really that consistent, although on paper it is really strong into Suicune Greninja and the ability to KO a Greninja on the bench or 1 KO Suicune in the active spot. And I think that's pretty cool. Luxray's been like fringe meta for a long time. I think a lot of people have tried to build around Luxray to counter Oricorio. I just don't, or not Oricorio, but Suicune. I just don't think it's consistent enough. Like all of these decks really come down to like, how often are we able to achieve what we want to achieve? And the answer is not as often as Suicune does. Like that's really what it comes down to. Again, we are banning Greninja this weekend. Let's see how that goes. Now, again, in a couple of weeks or next week, probably we're going to get a lot more information about B1 and all of the cards that are coming in the 3 booster packs for the 1-year anniversary update. And I'm actually really excited because I think that there's probably going to be a massive shift in the metagame, something that's been greatly needed for quite some time. And you never know, like when new cards come out or when new things come out, you never know if old cards that maybe weren't good before are going to rise up and play. So there's just a lot of things that I think are going to change going into November, and we are really just have to wait and see what that is. We'll theory craft as much as we can when the new cards get leaked or teased, but until then, we just have to wait and see. More lightning type Pokemon that are good, but they just like aren't good enough. You know what I mean? Like they're just right on the fence, and I feel like that's kind of tough. Anyway, shout out to Luxray, shout out to Ravenous 6 went 4-3 playing Luxray Oricorio. Again, I love showcasing these players that are playing like these off meta decks but still doing well. It definitely makes me really happy. Next up is going to be Javli NT from the United States, and he was playing Gallade. You guys remember Gallade? It's been a long time since we've seen Gallade pop up here. To be honest with you, I don't really know any advantages that Gallade could have in the metagame. We are playing Lucario and we're playing Hitmontop. out, but yeah, it's literally just Gallade. And you know, Gallade's not a bad Pokemon. It's 170. We have access to Lele. It's a stage 2 Pokemon, and it does deal a decent amount of damage. It does 70 plus 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, you also got to keep in mind, Suicune typically only has 2 energies attached, right? So that is only 110 damage for Gallade. So again, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what is Gallade? Is it doing anything in this Suicune? Is there really a reason to play it? Theoretically, with Lucario, we can get up to that 140, but then we need double Gallade. We do have Hitmontop as a leadoff option, theoretically, to act as sort of a buffer before we go into Gallade, and we do have Cyrus. But in general, I just don't really know what Gallade is doing. I wanted to showcase it because I realized today that Gallade went 4-3 at the tournament. Do I know why? Am I going to recommend anyone play Gallade? I don't really think so. Again, against Giratina Darkrai, Gallade can be really good. Against maybe some other lightning type decks, also Gallade could be good. I mean, against most lightning decks, I would assume Gallade actually kind of sweeps with Lucario and Hitmonlee, but again, into like the whole Greninja Suicune thing, I just don't know how we function quite well. Probably why we didn't make it into day 2, quite honestly. But when you play in tournaments, you might not hit any Suicune, right? Even if Suicune's 20 to 30% of the meta share, there's a chance that you don't hit Suicune. So anyway, shout out to Gallade. It's not really something I would recommend, but we had to showcase it. I mean, come on. Gallade going 4-3, just missed top cut. Shout out to Javli NT bringing it back. Yo, Gallade. Dude, let's go, Gallade. Anyway, Quindorian from the US also went 4-3. He was playing Incineroar, so I think we talked about Incineroar last week. It got like first place at a small tournament. Also did, I think similarly went 4-3 at our tournament last week. Incineroar is cool. So it's basically like it's very similar to the Cleffa like Charizard deck, and theoretically speaking, with Lily and How and Rocky Helmet and stuff, and the solo Incineroar, we can actually deal with Suicune pretty well, even though we're a fire type. But the cool thing about Incineroar is that we can play Rocky Helmets, we can burn, and it actually ends up being a lot more consistently better into the Oricorio stuff. And in this tournament, there was a lot of Oricorio Greninja too, so you got to keep that in mind. That's sort of the idea here. It's basically the exact same shell as Charizard, but instead of like hitting for 150, we are reliant on like How and Fire Fang and Rocky Helmet and the burn damage to maybe 2 a KO before we get the Scar Charged Smash off, which does 140, and then with How, that's 170, so that's a lot of damage. I actually do like Incineroar. You know, these like solo stage 2 EX decks like have potential, they really do. I just don't know if the archetypes are going to really survive. I think that what we're seeing right now is like a teaser for what's likely going to be how we play some of the Mega Pokemon, specifically like the Stage 2 Mega Pokemon. I could see this exact deck, but replacing this with Blaziken EX, the new Mega Blaziken EX coming in B1. And now we just have like a Pokemon with 210 HP, hitting for a little bit more damage. You know, it's also a Stage 2, so we can still use Lily. I think that Mega Pokemon have potential with Cleffa in this particular type of archetype. And it really just depends whether or not those Megas are going to be enough to really get over like the Suicune hump, you know? I'll be curious to see how that all works, but shout out to Incineroar, shout out to Quindorian for going 4-3 with Incineroar. You know, it's Incineroar. We had to shout him out. Okay, to wrap up this video, we've gotten a very interesting deck. This is Toxic Luyo from Puerto Rico. Again, 4-3. He played Lycanroc. This is like Turbo Lycanroc Marshadow. One of the weirdest decks that I've ever seen, but I had to talk about it in today's video. So again, you know, shout out to all these players that played just a really non-meta decks that ended up doing fairly well at the tournament. We got to give them credit. You know, it's always fun, again, to talk about decks that, again, aren't really in the metagame, but theoretically can still win, you know? So here we go. This is Lycanroc. This is Lycanroc EX. So this isn't like the Dusk or what is it? Like the werewolf one, I forget. Is that Dawn or Dusk? I honestly don't know. I can't remember, but that Lycanroc did see play for a little bit. This is Lycanroc EX, which, you know, if anybody didn't realize, does have 1 colorless energy in its attack cost, right? So it does 130 and you discard a fighting energy from the Pokemon, so we might not love to go against Guzzlord, but because it has 1 colorless energy, theoretically you can use baby Pokemon to just get Lycanroc set up on turn 2. And that is kind of funny. Like, that is inherently kind of interesting. Now, again, the fighting type, like, what advantages do we have playing fighting type right now? Very little. I mean, yes, there's lightning type decks in the format, but like Lycanroc isn't like, what are we trying to accomplish hitting for weakness, right? We don't even KO Suicune. So it's like, on one hand, it's like, why in the world would we ever play Lycanroc? We are playing 1 Lucario, so that can get us up to 150 to KO the Suicunes. And we do have Marshadow, and I actually really do like Marshadow in a deck, again, that doesn't really have any other answer to Oricorio most of the time. So this is, again, just sort of a counter meta to maybe all of the counter meta lightning type decks, I guess is what we define here as Lycanroc. I just thought this was pretty funny. Theoretically speaking, I think if I were to try to build a Lycanroc deck, this is probably what I would do. It's funny, right? 2 fighting, 1 colorless, so the baby Pokemon does work similarly to things like Darkrai. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Again, maybe in a world where Lightning type was dominating, a deck list like this would make sense. Things like Gallade, things like Lycanroc, these are just like fairly underwhelming Pokemon. You know, it's just funny that like people did bring them to the tournament and actually ended up having a positive win rate. It's just, you know, it's interesting, I guess, basically. So anyway, you know, again, would I recommend Lycanroc? Do I think you should play this to try to grind up to top 1000 Master Ball? Probably not. That's not what this video is about. This video is about championing the players, showcasing the players. Toxic Luyo, shout out to your Lycanroc Pichu deck. I saw Lycanroc Pichu on the standings and I was like, what is this? I had to take a look at it. Definitely pretty interesting. Again, that's what this video is all about. You know, we can't always talk about the best decks in the game. And since we do play we do have our own tournament series on the weekends, not only do I want to showcase like the top of the standings and the actual data and the results in our Meta Monday videos, but that gives us the opportunity to showcase all of these really fun, interesting decks that people play to the tournaments as well. So again, big shout out to everybody that we mentioned in this video. You know, go and try out all these decks. Let me know how they work. Probably not, you know, as good as you might think. Ranked is tough for sure because you're going to hit a lot of Suicune the higher rank you are. Yeah, there we go, guys. There's the video. A short one today. It is what it is. Go play in the tournament this weekend. Greninja is banned. I'm actually pumped about it. We'll see. We'll talk about it on Monday, how the Greninja ban goes. We might not do it again next week. Maybe we will. Who knows? We really just have a couple of weeks until B1 comes out. We're all in the waiting room. We're all waiting for it. Also, I believe Legends ZA comes out tonight. So I think everybody's going to be playing Legends ZA, including myself. Hey, it might be a good time if you're not playing Legends ZA to hop on the ranked ladder and grind it out, maybe get ahead of the curve. Either way, take a break from Legends ZA this weekend, play in the tournament. Greninja is banned, so don't bring Greninja to the tournament. You're going to get like disqualified if you bring it because it is banned. But anyway, shout out to Boxed.gg for our sponsor here for the tournament series. They're also going to be sponsoring some videos in the future, so we'll talk about them soon. But anyway, $250 in the prize pool. That's right, $125 to first place. Not too shabby. I'm pretty excited about it. Go ahead and register, link down in the description below. All right, guys, let's get out of here. Comment down below what you guys thought of these decks. Again, nothing too serious. I'm not considering these decks to be, you know, like incredibly strong. I guess you never know. You know, that's not necessarily what the video was about, right? So anyway, there it is, guys. Have a good one. Peace out. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.